Welcome to This Week in Hearing, where listeners find the latest information on hearing care. And we're interested in all kinds of issues relative to hearing care, but this is almost an extra special, particular This Week in Hearing episode because the new OTC regulations just came out. I mean, what a week it was with these regulations coming out and ADA and all the other things that are happening for all of us. We may take a couple of minutes and also talk a little bit about Medicare's entry into hearing care as well. I'm Bob Trainer. I'm your host for today's episode. And my guest is, thanks for coming back again, Brandon Sawalich, President and CEO of Starkey. And so my first question for you today, Brandon, would be, what are your initial thoughts on these proposed rules? Were they kind of the way you and many of our colleagues shaped them? And because I know there's a lot of work that went into this over a long period of time. So what are your initial thoughts?
Well, first, thanks for having me back. I think it was just over a week ago. And it was last Monday released our discussion, and then the proposed ruling came out right from the FDA, and we kind of thought it would be coming soon. And my first, glance and looking through, I think it was 114 pages, and asked by President Biden to speed it up. They met the deadline, and overall for the FDA, it wasn't an easy project for them. Of course, I mean you're dealing with a lot of variables in our industry and understanding it at first, but my first glance through and still digesting it, the FDA put in a lot of work, and it still allows for, some good comments and discussion to have in some areas that might be a little gray. And I think that's part of the comment period where we can speak up and provide input. And I know that whether it's HIA and industry and associations, having that opportunity because they know the patient. And for us, again, we support the FDA, and it's about patient satisfaction and safety, and not confusing the issue of what could be an over-the-counter hearing aid.
So now this is a comment period, and as I understand it, it's about a 90-day period?
Yes, it's a 90-day, and then if I recall, 90-day, and then they take 120 days to comment, and there's more. So for it to, technically become effective, or the law of the land, as you might say, as it comes to OTC hearing aids, you're looking at spring, summer of next year. So, I mean, they're not rushing it, and we appreciate the comment period. And it's not about who's first to comment. It is about digesting and thinking through, and then focusing on the priorities, because you're not going to go through everything in that document. They did what they felt was right and the best that they could provide to meet the president's deadline. And now we provide our comments and have the discussion.
Is there a particular place where dispensers and hearing care professionals can actually go to make those comments? Can we make comments as professionals as well, in addition to the
Absolutely.
ones the manufacturers are?
Absolutely. And I know that I'm sure that whether it's AAA, ADA, IHS, ASHA, state associations will be providing those links. And I know listen carefully, as we talked about last week, we provide guidance there because it's again, getting through and understanding how to engage and how to have a seat at the table. It's a roadmap, because it's no clear path of how to comment. And, you can go to the, I believe it's regulation.gov. And if I recall, that was the website where you can look it up and comment. But my message has been this week, or my opinion, I should say, to people is like, digest it. We don't need emotions right now. We need very thoughtful and productive comments, and the patient is the priority.
My understanding is at the beginning of the process, there were a whole lot of emotions going on anyway. That emotional period has probably really already been there. And so now we those kinds of things. And And my understanding is you also now have a new video on Listen Carefully, which is can help people kind of direct them a little bit in some of the things that they may want to do.
Yes. Yes. And Starkey and NHIA is doing the same, as educating now. What does it mean? What are we looking at? The industry is working together, of course, HIA and its board, and providing the right input to the FDA. As I said earlier, it's not about who comments first. They don't look at it in that way. It's the thoughtful comments. And then Starkey, is providing guidance to our customer base on, what the process is, how you get involved, and how to think about it. We're not trying to form opinions. You want to influence, but the reality is we're all in this together. And whether it's AAA, ADA, IHS, and Starkey, Oticon, Widex, I can go down the list. We have more in common than differences. Then, and the reality is, if you start with the patient, you can't go wrong. So, we're really focused on doing what's right and not, trying to limit access or the affordability. We want to promote it because we're all in the industry of, increasing that 34% penetration rate.
Yes. So now from where you sit, my guess is that if manufacturers haven't got something kind of in the pipeline already for OTC products, they've been kind of sitting on their laurels. So and I don't think that many of the people that I know in the industry have been sitting around waiting just for this regulation. That there are products that are going to be coming on the market from the big five as well.
Yeah, that's one of the first questions I've been asked over the last 5 years. I can't speak for the other four. I know for Starkey, there is no super secret plan, to be honest with you. But it's a cheaper hearing aid, or it's a device that's going to help somebody that, if that's what they're looking for, some type of mild to moderate do-it-yourself, why can't we provide those to the hearing healthcare professionals? Anybody could sell them over the counter. I have no interest personally of guiding Starkey to go to a big retailer and hang them on shelves, because that's not the right thing to do. And I think you get, when it comes to service and care, you can't commoditize better hearing. So for me, as president and CEO of Starkey and the team here, because we got a lot of great talent, we got a lot of good people that are excited about the future. And when they read the articles and we've recruited and hired a lot of great new talent from other industries the last 4 or 5 years, and they're learning and they see the articles, so they get excited, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I want to wait and see. This isn't something you want to, my opinion, for Starkey, you want to go out and be the first on, because, it is about the patient. So we've got such strong relationships with hearing healthcare professionals in the United States and around the world. How are they involved? Think about it differently, because, I'm putting the patient and our customers over the profit and, the possibilities, which, again, I think it's going to be a long evolution and a learning curve, because you got to worry about the returns of the care and the service.
Most of us, and I heard around ADA that most of my colleagues were embracing the OTC projects and the OTC products because we can start somebody at pretty low, and we can move them up, and we can move them up, and we can move them up. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, it allows us to embrace that extra part of the market that we've never been able to penetrate as manufacturers and as clinicians and so on. So I think that the embracing of the products is really where we're probably going to end up.
Yeah, and HIA as an association, Starkey, we embrace over-the-counter hearing aids. We embrace what the work the FDA is doing. The thing is, many of us, maybe fewer than before, remember Songbird, right? Johnson and Johnson. We were all, everybody was going to be out of business in, X amount of, months or years. And it came down to the same thing. the patient's in charge. The patient's going to decide. Over-the-counter product to me is saying, it's out there right now because you don't know what it is, what's direct to consumer, over-the-counter, a cheaper hearing aid, online telehealth and fitting. What's the difference? I mean, you're talking about a product versus different channels and services, so it's available now. And it comes down to the satisfaction. And it's somebody that's saying, you know what, they're raising their hand and I have a hearing problem. I need help. And they really don't know what to do because they really don't understand the model. Because I know if I need a physical or my cholesterol checked or whatever, I know what to do with that. But if I have a hearing loss, they think, well, I go to the doctor or get a physical. No, it's not part of it. So, if they need hearing help and they're looking at over the counter and all they hear in the media are from people, well, they cost too much. They don't understand the art and the science that comes with it. So if anything, over the counter hearing aid, basically, people declare they need hearing help and the professional should embrace that.
Well, and I think as we talked about last time, Brandon, the idea of modifying your pricing structures so you can obtain good benefit as a practice from those patients that tend to purchase products elsewhere by making certain programs available for them. And no, I think that the OTC products are here to stay, and I would encourage my colleagues, either on the dispensing side or on the audiology side, to have a number of those products in their clinics that they feel comfortable with, that they really feel will be of benefit to patients who don't want to spend a lot for products, and have those available to them.
And the right ones, Bob, I would say, just to finish that, it's the satisfaction. There's going to be a lot of bad actors that are going to come out even more. And we have to focus on, not the confusion of the reputation of hearing aids, but what is a real over-the-counter hearing aid and how a professional can introduce them correctly to, amplification and what that means for better hearing health. And then, move them up in technology as the patient needs it based on their lifestyle.
So now there was part of the regulation that talked about over the counter, but another portion of it talked about a prescription for patients with severe to profound hearing losses. That should be of some benefit to all of us in practice, I would think, to have to actually be writing prescriptions for certain products for certain patients.
Yeah, and I'm not, it's again digesting that one and working through on how we respond, because I've heard that word, the prescriptions, we use it a lot with, I've heard it from people outside our industry or the media. They use that word, but it still comes down to patient safety and satisfaction. So if it's a severe to profound loss, what is that prescription or recommendation by the professional that they need? And that's been our big focus too on the discussion going on with Medicare.
Yeah. So speaking of Medicare, so how do we have any idea how that might affect the industry? I know on one side, if it's a durable medical care, durable product, where the government purchases it and they pay us a dispensing fee and a follow-up fee. But if it's something like a walker or whatever else you get at a medical supply store, then that's a more like the model that we're used to. So where do you sit with that one?
It's kind of like bringing both sides of the aisle together, just on if it's daytime or nighttime outside, because it's, one thing that with the Medicare discussion that's going on is, there's the media and the politics to it. Set that aside, because that is the front and part of the process.
Yeah.
We have been very engaged, HIA partnering also with others, and HLAs has been part of that discussion. And, they've really been working with us, being Capitol Hill, on how is this done right? They're asking the right questions, because our concern isn't about, if it's, Medicare is expanded to cover hearing, do it right, just like with over the counter,
Yeah.
because you have a lot of good, smart people doing a lot in a very large reconciliation or infrastructure bill. And then you've got the politics side of it, which is, perfectly normal of, we're reducing, cost of hearing aids and expanding Medicare. Well, that's the quick, talking points. But then of course you got to get down into the details to make sure it's done correctly for the patient. That's been our biggest fear. But I know that we've been having the right discussions. They're listening. You see that, I think, in the House bill where we talk about prosthetics, the top up, people being able to, upgrade. And then, including, if we talk access, right, that's the big word in, DC on expanding Medicare and access and affordable hearing aids. And, you got to include hearing specialists. I mean, it is what it is there. It's because you can't have access and try and help, increase the penetration rate and focus on one, a profession, being if it's just audiology. And I love audiology. I got plenty of friends in audiology.
Of course.
We got plenty of friends as hearing aid specialists. But this is about an art and science of the fitting and helping somebody hear better. You've got to have hearing aid specialists included because that's how you have true access. And that's how you help, 45 million people that have hearing loss.
The idea that it's always been one of those questions that there's not quite enough audiologists to go around, and the dispensers may need to be involved as well to really do the service for the hearing impaired as necessary.
And I, respectfully, very much respectfully, because Starkey is very proud of, being a partner with the VA for our veterans. Mm-hmm. And you've got very hardworking audiologists that are, doing everything they can to help the veterans with tinnitus and hearing loss. And, their wait time is, incredibly long. So now imagine if you single focus this outcome, this Medicare expansion to, again, maybe just audiology or something else. Think of the wait list for people that really do need the hearing help that they're trying and wanting to expand Medicare for. So it's all about the access and making sure that hearing aid specialists are included. And I know the VA has done a great job with their programs over the years to better serve the veterans and get more hearing help to them.
So it sounds like one of the big things that we have to look for in the Medicare expansion would be how we go about how it's being set up and how it's being organized and yes. And so on. And I know that there's a lot of things that would still need to be done with the expansion of Medicare into hearing care as well. So this is something that'll happen tomorrow for sure.
Exactly. I was just going to say this is a long way from being over. It could change. You've got the House bill that's out. Senate will have a bill. We're working closely, advising, answering their questions, and they're being very thoughtful, and they want to do it right. But again, this is a pebble in a rock quarry. I mean, it's one thing in a very large bill that Congress wants to pass in the Biden administration. But it's, I think we're in the third inning. If you use my a sports reference, it still has a long way to go. And we all have a seat at the table for doing this right in the discussion.
Yeah, and I think the manufacturers, the HIA, and the associations, as well as all my colleagues on the dispensing side, as well as on the audiology side, will have their input through their various channels to facilitate, hopefully, doing the right thing. And so it is one of those things that is quite different and quite interesting. And let's hope it all goes the right way. We'll encourage our colleagues to make their comments on the current OTC regulations within the 90-day period. My understanding is we may not see products in that marketplace until around next fall sometime. That was what the estimate was, if I remember correctly.
Correct. That's the overall estimate. There's some that have been out there. We discussed, I think, just last week, but that's causing some confusion. But you have state AGs, attorney generals that are handling this, and again, it's just about doing it right. And yeah, probably June to August, give it that time frame. And then again, with the Medicare expansion, who knows when or if that happens, but we're doing all we can to make sure that if they're wanting to do it, let's get this right.
Well, what I think is interesting is there's so many things changing right now in the area of hearing care, and as those things are happening, it seems like we now have three audiology organizations talking to each other. Now, if we can get those organizations to talk with the dispenser organizations, and we get everyone on board, because they'll probably take all of that to get the Medicare system set up for the hearing impaired the way it should be, and then I know that the HIA works together with all the manufacturing entities to facilitate the same thing. So
Yes.
it sounds like in a way, it's been kind of good to wait this long for some of these things to happen, because it seems like we're set up on both sides of the practice spectrum, as well as with the manufacturers, to facilitate a good result.
Yeah, and I've been around the industry for, probably 35 years, 40 years, but I've been at Starkey for 28. And I will tell you, for the first time, look, the positive that's coming out of all of this is the discussion is happening. Hearing healthcare was under the radar for years, right? We know this.
Oh yeah.
And now we're being reached out. It's in the spotlight, and we have a podium, we have a microphone. We have what we need as an organization, as an industry, to have the right discussions, to educate, because it's not that $6,000 advice, that one tagline, that one soundbite that they all use. And in my 28 years, I will say, for the first time that I can recall, you have, all three of ASHA, ADA, AAA, IHS, HIA, HLAA. I mean, everybody is aligned around the common purpose, and that is, doing what is right for the patient and better hearing. So the discussions are happening. HIA in the board, as you mentioned, other hearing aid manufacturers. Yes, we're competitors. We compete out on the street. But when I started as chairman in 2016, served 2 terms, and just stepped down July 1st, Gary Rosenblum, U.S. president of Oticon's chairman, U.S. president of FONAC, Sandy Brandmeier is vice chair. And we have an engaged board, and it's for the greater good. It's not about, the business side, because obviously that's separate, and we don't talk about that. And from the board of HIA, we talk about what is best for the greater good of the patient. And when these discussions are coming up, and they're going to come up at federal more, and states, and the state level, that's going to be next, in my opinion. And you know what? We have a very engaged board that's doing the right thing for the patient. And we talk. We've been having meetings every 2 weeks, and Gary's leading those discussions with the rest of the board, and of course my involvement, and Kate Carr is president of HIA, Bridget, who's out there, Bridget Dobson, who's out there on Capitol Hill every day meeting and educating staffers and members of Congress. And then Lindsay Robinson, who's organizing, and she's she's the air traffic control tower basically for all the meetings, the communications. So we have a very strong HIA, Hearing Industries Association, and board that is doing the right things and partnering with associations. We're not lone wolves. We're not out there trying to do it for other reasons. Patient safety, patient satisfaction, and having a seat at the table.
Great. Well, I think we're at this point in time, we probably have gotten about as far as we can go with a discussion with this particular issue, and the Medicare possible involvement of Medicare as well. And I want to thank Brandon so much for coming back and having a discussion with us again regarding these important issues. And hopefully another day, another time when something else comes up or another one of the issues hit, we'll have another discussion on these issues. So,
anytime. I appreciate just the chance and sharing, because we're passionate. You and I talked last time about whether it's when we were at the Mid-Atlantic conference or last week. You're passionate, or I'm passionate about our industry and doing what's right. And hey, just like you want me to be a recurring guest, just pick up the phone and call.
All right.
Happy to share anything with you. I'm pretty transparent.
Thanks again, Brandon, for your insight, not only from the manufacturer side, but also from the HIA side. Because I think to many of my colleagues, HIA is kind of this nebulous kind of a thing out there. It's like it being in the cloud, and they're kind of looking down. And who are those guys? And what are they doing? And those kinds of things. And so, thanks for the update actually on the HIA. And again, thanks for being with us. And hope that things will go well with the comment period on the OTC regulations. And we will all continue to watch what happens with Medicare as they maybe move into the hearing care profession.
Thank you again, Bob. Thanks for having me. We have better days in front of us. I'm not worried about the future because more people are going to need what we all provide as services and products to help.